All right, so good afternoon. I am Jane Jubilee, member of the Bishop staff, Episcopal Diocese of Newark. I am starting off our video series titled The Hidden Black History of the Diocese of Newark, where we're featuring individual experiences, memories, histories brought to us by members of our diocese representing historically Black churches in the diocese. And we are very fortunate and grateful for everyone who's taking part. And we're starting with Carol Harrison-Arnold, who's been gracious enough to tell us her story, her view, the history of Incarnation in Jersey City through her eyes. And we're just going to let you roll and tell us your view of the hidden Black history of Incarnation in Jersey City. And again, we thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I appreciate being asked to participate in this video series. I am very proud of who we are. I'm not going to say who we are as Incarnation, because we are not officially united yet with St. Paul's, but we are a part of St. Paul's and now are St. Paul's and Incarnation. So we continue to live on and we continue to take that legacy with us. So I guess I have to start at my beginning. And I feel very grateful that this is through my eyes and I don't have to worry about dotting I's and crossing T's because it's my view and my history. I came to Incarnation in early 1990s. I had relocated to Jersey City. I had been out of the Episcopal Church for some time. My children are actually fifth generation Episcopalians. I don't know if there's going to be a sixth, but right, they are fifth generation Episcopalians. And I was looking for a church home. And it was funny because I had gone up the street. I lived not far from St. John's on Summit Avenue, and I became a member at St. John's. And at that time, Reverend Isaac Prasad from Incarnation was also at St. John's. And so shortly after that, when St. John's closed, he invited me to join them at Incarnation. I had no idea there was another Episcopal church right down the street from St. John's. And I mean, right down the street from St. John's. And I went one Sunday morning, I don't remember what time of the year it was, with my two children. And it was a vibrant, mixed in terms of the African Caribbean experience, mixed congregation where I felt very at home. Being Episcopalian, Episcopal church, seeing people of color, it was great being around people of color. Although I will say, my children are Taylor and Ellington, and Ellington was a rambunctious little boy. And unbeknownst to me initially, but I did find out later, they had nicknamed my child Yellington. So it was like, and I was like, but I was fine with it because Reverend Prasad had no problem with him being rambunctious, sorry. And the fact that I could not keep him in my lap during service. And it was very important to me that he be able to express himself during that time. And if that meant getting up and walking around, as long as he wasn't really disturbing anyone, that was okay with Father Prasad, which made me very comfortable because I felt very strong that if I had to reprimand my child, as soon as he got old enough, he wasn't going to be there. So I felt comfortable being there. It was a rich mix of African Americans and Caribbeans. We celebrated Antigua Independence Day. The ambassador would be at the church. There were all kinds of activities around other Caribbean islands and Africa. And it just was an exciting place to be at the time. Unfortunately, there were some issues with Father Prasad. There were some that had been ongoing before I got there. it ended up being very divisive for the congregation. And we kind of fell apart. And unfortunately, being a predominantly Black congregation in the Diocese of Newark, prior experiences had led to a great mistrust of the diocese. And so when we started having problems, what may have been a resource for us in that the diocese we were part of probably had ways to help us, there was no interest in reaching out and talking to the diocese. If anything, people felt more alienated because of the diocese and their history with them. I can't speak to a lot of that prior history because I wasn't there, but in the congregation, there was definitely a sense that being an urban congregation, being a predominantly Black congregation, there was no interest in the diocese really helping us. And that was something during my years at Incarnation. And again, my son is 31, and when I came to Incarnation, he was in my arms. So at my time at Incarnation, I ended up in a leadership position. And during those years, Sidney King Jr., who was I called him my partner in Christ, who unfortunately passed very early in the pandemic due to COVID. But we were on a conscious mission to change the perception of the diocese in our congregation. And one of the things that I admired about Sidney was his commitment to the church. Reverend Tom Murphy at St. Paul's said some of the kindest words and just rang so true about Sidney after he passed, about how much the church meant to him. And we used to tease him and joke that he lived at the church and went home for meetings. But for him, it wasn't just the church being Incarnation, it was the church being the Episcopal Church, the Diocese of Newark, UBE. It was a total package for him. And because of him, many of us were involved on a diocesan level. So we may have been a small congregation from Jersey City, but the first African-American member of the Board of Trustees was Antoinette Niels from Incarnation. I served on the trustees. I served on AXVIM. I served on some of Bishop Beckwith's committees. Sidney did everything in the diocese. I think the only thing that Sidney did not do was trustees. I had that covered, but he did everything else. Department of Missions, Ward J. Herbert, Diocesan Council, UBE, you named it, Sidney did it, as well as others in our congregation. And it was important for us, even though we were a congregation of color, to have that involvement, to have that visibility on a diocesan level. And I don't know that people on the diocese were even that aware of just what pioneers we were, because in many ways we were pioneers. Incarnation started in 1910, right? In 1910, because they were not welcomed at St. John's. So they started their own church and it became Incarnation. And during those early years when I weren't there, the church thrived. They had cotillions. They had bowling leagues. They had bowling leagues. They just, oh my gosh, they just did everything. Because at that time, it was so different because church was much more important to people and it was a much more vital part of their lives. And Incarnation filled that for a lot of African-American people in the community, particularly people of color who were professionals. They had a reputation of being the teachers and the doctors and whatever else. So we never returned to that after people started leaving the church in droves, but we were still pioneers in that we started ministries like our food pantry that everyone does. I know it wasn't publicized, and although the community may or may not have known, but we had actually engaged the needle exchange program during the 90s to serve our community. We were affiliated with Garden State at the time. It was Garden State Episcopal. It's now Garden State Community Development Corporation, and the drop-in center. We had homeless people coming through our church. We were really living and doing the work that we believe God had chosen us to do, and doing it well. When we got on hard times, what I was most impressed with the congregation and our hidden strength was our resilience and our ability to have that faith and have that hope and to keep on going. In the early, I guess after 2010, after we celebrated our centennial, we fell on hard times financially. We were struggling. The good thing about that struggle, though, is it always had you exploring resources to get to a better place, to be able to thrive, not just survive. And anything that came up, we took advantage of it. And if it was start up, start over, if it was when 2 or 3 are gathered, national programs, regional programs, we were always there. We were always participating. That was our resilience. And in my way, that was one of our hidden gems. We were also willing to do radical things. Our mission now in the diocese is to have bold action, bold love, bold faith. Incarnation epitomized that boldness. We decided to move our service to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that was not an easy decision, but if we do this or we might close our doors, people kind of got on the wagon and did it. So we moved our service to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which allowed us to rent the church in the morning and to have a source of income to help us financially. And then the most fun part of that was our choir, for which we were very well known. We had a really good choir under our Minister of Music, Gail Blash Gill, went on the road. And there are many who are going to be viewing this who know what I'm talking about. When we went to other churches that did not have choirs or have a music program. And it was oh my gosh, it was such a joyful experience, because you would sit there and people half smiled, half, just kind of whatever. And then when toward the end of the service, people up, dancing and laughing with us. And after the service, how glad that we were there. And it was just a wonderful experience. And it's something that I wish we could see and do more of in the diocese these days. And that is to share our resources, to share our music, to share our gifts, whether it be other ministries that we could do jointly, support each other, but certainly the music. And that was just a wonderful thing. And because our service was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we could be at your church at 10 o'clock for your Sunday morning service. And we did it once or twice a month, and it was very rewarding. So for me, we had a full life, although we didn't have full pews. And unfortunately, a lot of times the finances dictate how you are perceived and your viability, not what you might be contributing in your community and what you might be doing. And as a Black church, I was proud of the work that we were doing. I was proud of how we were making ourselves known in the diocese and being visible in the diocese and being in leadership positions. I was proud of serving our community. It was hard many of those years, though, because there is a perception that the diocese didn't care, and for us, because JCAM is a term that many folks in the diocese know. It's a Jersey City area ministry, allowed us to have access to resources that a lot of other churches didn't have. Because if Sidney were here, he would tell you what convention it was. He could name the resolution. I'd have to go look at some papers. But there was a resolution at convention, 20 or so years ago, more than that, that kept all of the money from the sale of churches in Jersey City. So we were fortunate to have resources to do some things that maybe other churches didn't have. But because of that, we also felt at times a target of other churches outside of Jersey City who did not believe we were entitled to this money and these resources. And that's a reflection of what you feel like you're dealing with on a broader level as well in society, in that you're not expected to have, you're not expected to do, you're not expected to excel. But we did. We weren't able to do all that we wanted to do, but we did a lot. We were vibrant. We celebrated our 100-year anniversary with the primate at the time, and that was a time of honor for us. So yeah, I felt like we were the little Black church that could, a little hidden gem in Jersey City on Storms Avenue, in a place so invisible that I could get into a cab that was about a half a mile away and ask them to take me to the church on Storms Avenue. They didn't know what I was talking about because it was just not in a good location, but a great space, wonderful backyard. We had services outside. We had block parties. I just have really great memories of our experiences at Incarnation. And I'm very proud of the work that we did and our contributions to the diocese on a whole. So that's my view of the history of Incarnation through my eyes from the 1990s to the present. And the present we live on at St. Paul's on Duncan Avenue, which was just 4 blocks, not even, from where we were, and are looking forward to making more contributions, doing more on a diocesan level as well for our community. So that's my story.
Fascinating. Do you, and I thank you so much for sharing. You mentioned a little bit about the origins going back to 1910, and it's my understanding that Incarnation was historically Black from its inception.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Founded by a group of about 8 to 9 people, predominantly women, started on Harrison Avenue in someone's living room. And I'm not sure how they raised the money or got the funds, but the building on Storms Avenue was built like in 1928. So from 1910 to 1928, they grew enough to be able to purchase a property and build a building. And during the 50s, oh gosh, some of the pictures of the confirmation class, just the number of members, there were like 40, 45, and to see all of these young, cute little, African-American children, it was really cool. And even during the years that I was there, I had started a choir. They were the Carnations. And at our heyday in the late 90s, I had 44 kids. So, things have changed a lot. Things have changed a lot, but yeah, as I say, fond memories and humble beginnings, but yeah, we did a lot of good things.
Well, it just goes to show that there's always hope. And if you can start off small and get big, you can restart small.
Yes. Yeah.
And get big.
And reinvent
because you're
yourself.
going to.
Yes.
Yeah.
And reinvent yourself, which is what I had always hoped. And now with Incarnation merging with St. Paul's, we're very close to our sister church, Grace Van Voorst downtown. One of the dreams of the Jersey City Area Strategy, which was the predecessor organization to JCAM, was that there be unified ministry in Jersey City. And that just never happened until Lori Worm and Tom Murphy became the rectors at the 2 churches in Jersey City. And that began a whole revitalization of that dream and our willingness and ability to work together and to do ministry, which evolved into Episcopal Jersey City and the Triangle Park Community Center, which is thriving and serving the South Jersey City community in a way that has never been served at least in my experience, whether it be the youth trying to get the kids off the street and have a dialogue with them, whether it be an extension of North Porch, the pantry. Just Monica Shaw is the director, and she just does a phenomenal job. So there's definitely more to be proud of in the work we've done in Jersey City. And one of my dreams is that what we do and how we do it may one day be a template for other urban churches to help them navigate the challenges that are unique to us in urban settings, and to help us thrive.
That's so exciting. And I am so grateful for you to share. And through this program of interviews, we will not be lighting these torches under bushels anymore. These, and perhaps these hidden gems will no longer be hidden. And I think that's the principal reason of why we're telling these stories and sharing these experiences, because there are some hidden gems connected to the Black history of our churches. And if nothing else, they will no longer be hidden. And therefore, along with that hope and faith, they'll continue to grow.
Yes.
If not regrow. Yeah.
And tell the story. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there was a project in Jersey City. I was a part of it initially, but there were too many things on my plate, that documented the history. It documented the stories from Incarnation, from Grace Church, of the Black experiences. And what was interesting about that process, because I did what you're doing, I interviewed a couple people for that, was people didn't feel they were a Black church necessarily. I mean, there was anger that there had to be a Black church, right, but not feeling like they were a Black church, not feeling that they were limited, just feeling that they could do whatever they needed to do to serve the community, to serve their congregants, to get outside of our walls and to make a difference in our communities. And that was a process as well. That was always the case, but that was a process as well. There's a lot, and as you're talking, it just brings up more like, oh yeah, I should have mentioned that. Oh yeah, I should have mentioned that. And that will always be the case. There will always be more to mention, I believe.
And therefore, we will continue for generations to come. And with that inspiration, those are seeds that get planted for our future. Yes. And if we hold on to hope and faith and tend to those seedlings, yes, we're not gonna die.
That's right.
We'll live on. That's our eternity.
That's right. That's right. Continue to thrive. Be bold in our actions, in our faith, in our love, and it'll make a difference in the world for sure.
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jane. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to share.